My name is Alva Swan. I'm 67 years old. My retirement income isn't much, just enough to scrape by. But I've pinched pennies for years and somehow managed to save up $20,000. That might not mean much to most folks, but to me it's a burning ember I kept alive with sheer discipline and sacrifice. Every dollar came from cutting corners and doing without. But the money's not for me. At my age, what else am I really hoping for? I just wanted to spend a few days close to my son Elwin and his family. He's 40 now, doing well in San Francisco with a steady job, a house, a wife, Debbie, and an 8-year-old son named Hardy. That boy is the only bright light that still warms my heart. But the truth is, our relationship has always felt like there's frosted glass between us. Close but unreachable. I see them, I hear them, but I can't quite touch their world. And more often than not, it hurts. Elwin is always busy. And Debbie? She's made it clear she thinks I'm outdated. She finds me embarrassing, too frugal, too talkative. Every time I visit, I feel like an unwelcome guest, tiptoeing, careful not to breathe too loudly. Those $20,000, they were my last attempt to open that cold, locked door. I took a deep breath and called Elwin. On the other end, I could already hear the familiar background noise, clinking glasses, voices, and his impatient tone. Sounded like he was at some work event. "Mom? What is it?" "I'm kind of in the middle of something," he said quickly, like he couldn't wait to hang up. I cleared my throat. "Owen, honey. I saved up a little money and I was thinking maybe I could take you all on a short trip. Just 3 days somewhere nearby. A little getaway. Spend time with Hardy." There was a pause. Then a shallow chuckle. "Mom, if you've got extra cash, keep it for yourself. We don't really have time for a vacation." My heart dropped like someone had poured ice water straight through my chest. My fingers clenched the edge of my old wool sweater, nearly ripping it. "Just 3 days," I whispered. "Hardy's on spring break, right? It'd be good for him, and I'd love a few more days with you all." He exhaled, annoyed. "Fine. I'll talk to Debbie. Just 3 days, nothing too far. Don't make it a whole thing." The line went dead. That dial tone buzzed in my ear as if mocking me for hoping too much. You see, I've spent my whole life living for other people. And now, the little I've managed to set aside for myself, I'm not even spending it on me. I'm trying to buy 3 days of closeness. That's the quiet tragedy of being a mother. Even when you know you're not wanted, you keep reaching out to the people who've shut you out. Still, even after that call, I let myself believe, maybe, just maybe, this trip could change something. I started prepping like it was Christmas morning. Dug out my nicest coat, the one that still looked half decent, and ironed it twice. Went to the grocery store to grab all their favorite snacks, but then worried they weren't healthy enough, so I made my own beef jerky and some little butter cookies, packed neatly in washed and reused jars. Every bite was wrapped in care. The day of the trip, I got up before sunrise. Slipped on my coat. Checked myself in the mirror over and over, hoping I looked presentable. I didn't want to embarrass them. When I arrived at Elwin's house, his car was already in the driveway. I stood there with my bags, big, small, overstuffed, with a nervous little smile frozen on my face. The door opened. Debbie stood there, gave me a slow once-over head to toe. Her brow tightened slightly. Her lips curled just a bit. "Mom, you're wearing that coat? I thought we were going somewhere fun. That color's kind of old lady, don't you think?" She wasn't loud, but every word pierced like a pin through skin. My smile faltered. I rubbed the hem of my coat between my fingers. That red coat, it was the best I had. Suddenly, it felt glaringly cheap under her gaze. "It's warm," I murmured, barely audible. "And it's still in good shape." Elwin stepped out behind her and grabbed one of my bags. "Come on, Mom. Let's go. We don't want to be late." Only Hardy came flying out like a rocket, latching onto my legs with a full-body hug. "Grandma's coming too? This is gonna be awesome." His grin was pure sunlight. I knelt down, smoothing his soft hair, and blinked fast. That little boy's love, that was the only warmth I could truly count on. We piled into the car. I was tucked into the back seat with Hardy and a mountain of bags. Debbie sat up front, touching up her lipstick. Elwin focused on driving. My homemade snacks, the jerky, the cookies, were shoved into a grocery bag on the floor, untouched, unnoticed. And so the trip began. A trip packed with my fragile hope, and the quiet dread that I already knew how it would end. The car was headed south along the California coast, toward a newly developed resort town. I'd originally suggested we go north, to a quiet little mountain village. Cheaper, peaceful with crisp air and starry skies. Mom, that kind of place is for senior bus tours. Elwyn shut it down immediately. We're going to that new hot springs resort. Hardy loves the water. Debbie chimed in right away. Exactly. If we're doing a family trip, let's do it right. You've got the money, don't be so uptight about it. I opened my mouth ready to respond, then closed it again. What was the point? My opinion never really mattered. What mattered was that they were happy. That the money was being spent in a way they thought was worth it. When we got to the resort, the entrance fee alone made my stomach clench. The Hot Springs Hotel? Astronomical. Elwyn pulled out his phone and started booking a room. Debbie hovered next to him, pointing at options, filtering by room size, balcony view, Wi-Fi speed. Not once did either of them turn to ask me what I thought. The cost was silently assumed to be mine, like it was a given. I trailed behind them quietly, watching the numbers stack up on the screen like needles pricking into my chest. This was the money I scraped together for years, vanishing with a few taps of a finger. We had lunch at a restaurant that looked expensive even from the sidewalk. I flipped open the menu and nearly gasped. I was about to suggest something simple, just a bowl of soup maybe, when Debbie snatched the menu and started ordering for the table. A seafood tower, the chef's special, a bottle of red. Mom, don't be such a penny pincher, she said lightly, peeling shrimp as she shot me a glance. It's a trip. You've got to enjoy it. The table was full, bright colors, rich aromas, but I couldn't taste a thing. Halfway through the meal, Debbie dabbed her mouth with a napkin and frowned. This place is overrated. Nowhere near as good as that spot we went to with Wesley and them last month. Should have skipped this one. Elwyn grunted in agreement, eyes still glued to his phone. I sat there silent, watching them critique a table full of dishes I'd just paid for. I didn't feel like their mother. I felt like the invisible accountant for the trip. No one said thank you. No one asked if I wanted anything. I was just there. A walking wallet with a pulse. The restaurant lights were too bright, each one feeling like a spotlight exposing me for the fool I was. Spending everything I had for people who couldn't even pretend to care. They ordered the most expensive items on the menu. I watched the total grow, but not once did they look my way for input. It was as if my purse existed separate from me, as if the money inside was owed to them, but the person carrying it didn't deserve a voice. The more I gave, the more invisible I became. In the end, all they seemed to need from me was a card that swiped. That meal sat like clay in my mouth. My throat was dry, but it wasn't from the food. It was from the hollowness swelling inside me. The next day, the plan was to hike a nearby mountain trail. Supposedly the view at the top was incredible, totally worth the climb, Debbie had said. I used to be spry. I used to run errands all over town, help Elwyn with school projects, carry groceries, handle emergencies. But time isn't kind. I started off okay, but halfway up, my breathing turned shallow and ragged. My legs felt like cinder blocks. Elwyn and Debbie had surged ahead with Hardy, leaving me far behind. The distance stretched with every minute. Mom, can you move any slower? We're losing daylight here. Elwyn's voice rang out, echoing off the rocks like a public scolding. I flinched. My pride cracked open under its weight. I clenched my teeth and tried to push forward, sweat streaming down my back. My coat clung to me, soaked through. Debbie stood ahead, arms crossed, tapping her foot. Alva, if you really can't make it, just wait down there. Honestly, you're holding us back, she muttered, loud enough for me to hear every word. The blow landed right in my chest. A dull ache, not sharp but deep and familiar. I looked down at my legs. These legs that once ran him to school, stood through sleepless nights at the ear, worked overtime to help fund his business dreams. Now they were just dead weight. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just kept walking. One small step at a time, like shedding pieces of my former self with every inch I climbed. On the way back down, we passed a small stand selling local handmade crafts. I spotted a woven basket, simple but beautiful. It was perfect for Hardy's toys. Excuse me, how much is this one? I asked gently. Alva, why are you buying useless things? Debbie called out instantly. That stuff just clutters the house. $15 is still money, you know. She barely finished her sentence before tugging Hardy toward another booth. This one stocked with imported chocolates. She bought a big box without so much as glancing at the price. Cost several times more than the basket. My hand hung in the air a second longer, then slowly dropped. I walked away without saying a word. $15 from me was wasteful. Hundreds from them. Just another indulgence. That wasn't just a difference in values. It was a canyon carved straight through our hearts. That night, what truly broke me wasn't a fight. It wasn't a cruel word spoken to my face. It was what I overheard when I stepped out to the hallway to get a glass of water. Their door was slightly ajar. I hadn't meant to listen. "If you like the bag, just buy it," Elwin said. His voice was calm, steady. Assured. "But it's over 5,000. That's a lot," Debbie answered, her tone laced with fake hesitation, though her excitement bled right through it. "It's fine. Just use Mom's card. Didn't she say she still had money?" My body froze where I stood. My heart didn't even have the strength to beat. They were going to use my card, the same one I used to pay for the entire trip, to buy Debbie a luxury handbag? I backed away like a ghost step by step until I was back in the room. I sat at the edge of the bed, my chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. My heart felt like it had been wrung out by someone who never planned to stop squeezing. I had thought they were simply a little cold, a little self-centered. But this wasn't neglect. This was calculation. They saw my trust and my savings not as something to respect, but as assets to exploit. That was the moment I woke up. By the third day, the final day of our trip, I'd hit bottom emotionally. I didn't speak much. I simply followed behind like a quiet shadow, my eyes fixed on Hardy. He was the only one who still looked back at me and smiled. Debbie, on the other hand, was in high spirits. Probably because Elwin had agreed to buy her the bag. She was snapping selfies every 5 minutes, posing by the hotel's glass wall like a lifestyle influencer. Her smile didn't fade for a second. After lunch, we waited in the hotel lobby for our shuttle. Hardy had his mom's phone and was tapping away at a game. I wasn't paying much attention until he brought it over to me for help, holding it right in front of my face. That's when I saw it. The screen had accidentally pulled up Debbie's social media feed. Right there, front and center, was her latest post. A few filtered shots of the resort, some glam selfies, and underneath the caption, "Traveling with the elderly is so exhausting. Everything's inconvenient. Never again." At the end was a little shrug emoji. My mind went blank. It was like someone dropped a brick on the back of my skull. My ears rang, my vision blurred. I reached for the phone, my hand trembling, eyes locked on that sentence like it was a slap I couldn't dodge. Traveling with the elderly is a burden. A burden. That's what I was to her. Not a woman who gave everything she had. Not a mother who carefully planned every detail of this trip, who made snacks, booked rooms, kept her mouth shut just to keep the peace. No. Just a burden. An inconvenience to be complained about online. I stared at the phone until tears clouded the screen, each one burning away a piece of my last hope. I had believed, naively, that these 3 days might buy me even a flicker of warmth, maybe a smile, maybe a shared memory that felt like love. But all I got was humiliation dressed up as family time. I thought my generosity might be seen, that my effort might count. Instead, my silence was taken as weakness, my love mistaken for obligation. In that moment it hit me. Some kinds of love are just one-sided obsessions. Mine had become worthless in their eyes. That night, after returning home, I closed the front door gently behind me, slipped off my shoes and locked the world out. I crawled into bed, pulled the blanket over my head and cried. Not the kind of crying that wails through the house, but the kind that presses down on your chest until you can barely breathe. Quiet, endless tears that wash away every last bit of fantasy and wishful thinking. That was when I knew. I can't live like this anymore. The trip ended like a one-woman play that had drained every ounce of emotion, quietly, without applause. I returned to my small rented apartment. The old home I once owned, the one I gave up when Elwin got married, now belonged to them. What I had left was this borrowed space, bare and silent, like a layover stop for someone with nowhere permanent to be. After that, I stopped reaching out to them. I no longer called to ask what they had for dinner on the weekends or whether Hardy had recovered from his cold. On their end, the silence went unnoticed. Or maybe they noticed and just didn't care. Every so often Elwin would call, his voice polite, distant. "Hey Mom, just checking in. You doing okay? Need me to order anything for you?" It sounded like he was reading off a mental checklist. They stopped inviting me over for Sunday dinners too. That was fine. I found peace in the quiet. For the first time in years, I really thought about my life. I'd spent my whole existence orbiting around others. First my husband, then my son. Now they had their own orbits, their own gravity. Me. I was just drifting, still alone. Maybe it was time to stop spinning. Maybe it was time to live for me. I walked over to the mirror and stared at my reflection. The face staring back was tired, worn. 67 years old, and what had I done with the last chapters of my life? Was I really just going to fade out, quietly, politely, spending my remaining years trying to please people who barely noticed I was there? I had given so much, and never once learned how to say no. Maybe it was time. Time to take the second half of my life and make it mine. Something inside me shifted, subtle at first, like a frozen lake starting to crack beneath the sun. But it moved. And then the real turning point came. Quietly. Unexpectedly. That afternoon I felt a bit of tightness in my chest. Nothing serious, but enough to make me think I should stop by the community clinic to get checked and maybe pick up my prescriptions. I reached for my wallet to grab my Medicare card, and froze. It wasn't there. My stomach dropped. I rifled through every pocket, every drawer, every purse. Nothing. Then I paused, trying to remember the last time I used it. Right, my annual checkup. And then, just before our trip, Debbie had said she couldn't find her insurance card. She'd asked to borrow mine just to take Hardy to urgent care. Said the clinic would only accept local coverage. She'd said it casually, like it was no big deal. And like a fool, I'd handed it over without a second thought. I never followed up. And she never returned it. I picked up the phone and called her. Hi Debbie. I was just wondering, do you still have my Medicare card? I've looked everywhere and can't find it. There was a pause. Then her voice, light and airy, came through. Oh, Medicare card? Let me think. Yeah, I might have borrowed it. Things have been crazy lately. I probably forgot to give it back. I'll take a look, and if I find it, I'll drop it off. Too casual. Way too casual. Like I'd asked about a 2-for-1 coupon instead of an official ID tied to my healthcare and my bank. I really need it. Can you check soon? I need it for the clinic, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Yeah. I'm busy right now, Alva. Let's talk later. The call ended just like that. I stood there, gripping my phone until my hand ached. Something twisted in my gut. Her voice, too smooth. Too rehearsed. Not the tone of someone who simply forgot. And then it hit me, they were going to use my card to buy that bag. Without even asking. A card that was supposed to help me stay healthy, to protect me in old age. Just another piece of my life they saw as theirs for the taking. I had to know. I went straight to the bank. I asked to see the account tied to that card. The banker printed the statement and handed it to me. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. There it was. Transaction after transaction. Small charges, a few hundred here, nearly 1,000 there. All through third-party payment apps I'd never authorized. I'd never even used them. Then my eyes landed on the one that made my knees buckle. A withdrawal from my fixed savings. $10,000. Transferred directly into an account under Elwyn's name. I never approved that. I stared at the numbers. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat like a blow to the ribs. I forced myself to think. To trace it all back. Elwyn had asked for my phone several times during the trip. To check directions, book tickets. He'd even asked me to input my payment password once or twice. Said it wasn't accepting his card. I hadn't thought twice about it. But no. I saw it for what it was. He'd used that time to link my card to his apps. He'd taken what didn't belong to him. My retirement savings. The money I was supposed to live on. I felt something volcanic rising inside me. Rage, betrayal, shame. It scorched my throat and made it hard to breathe. They hadn't just used me. They'd emptied me out. But it wasn't over. The bank teller looked up again. Also, Miss Swan, there's a credit card under your name, opened last year. It's now overdrawn by more than $30,000. The billing address is listed as a residence in suburban San Francisco. I didn't need to ask. I knew exactly where that address led. Elwyn's house. My knees nearly gave out. When did I ever apply for a credit card? I never even touched the stuff. I stood there at the counter like my life had been stripped bare. The transaction records lay in front of me, cold and coiled like snakes, wrapping around my lungs, suffocating. Never in my life did I imagine that the money I'd worked so hard to save would be drained by the very people I trusted most. Not only were they ungrateful, they didn't even think they were doing anything wrong. To them, my existence had one purpose: to be an ATM that never runs out. A resource to be used, not a person to be loved. That may have been the most painful moment in all my 67 years. My vision blurred. The teller was speaking again, but I couldn't hear a word. Just a distant hum like I was underwater. I left the bank in a daze. The sun was blazing overhead, but I felt cold to my bones. This had to stop. If I didn't wake up now, there'd be nothing left. I took a deep breath and turned around. Walked straight back into the bank. Hi. I'd like to report my Medicare card as lost and freeze all associated accounts, I said. My voice was so calm it startled even me. I also want to investigate and close all credit cards under my name. Any unauthorized charges. I want to file a fraud report. And please, I added, remove all third-party payment links, reset account permissions and passwords, and cancel any autopay authorizations immediately. The bank employee looked up at me, and for a brief moment her expression softened. There was something in her eyes. Understanding, maybe even recognition. Without another word, she began processing everything efficiently, as if she'd done this many times before. "Are you sure you want to revoke your son's account access?" she asked gently. I met her gaze, then smiled faintly. "Yes," I said. No explanation needed. Some awakenings come late, but as long as they come in time, they still count. I'd made my decision. From now on, I would live for myself. No more giving to people who only take. When I stepped out of the bank again, the sun was starting to dip. The light turned golden, stretching my shadow long across the sidewalk. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and landed on a number I hadn't dialed in years. "Hello, Aunt Linda," I said, trying to steady my voice. "Hi, it's Alva. Yes, I'm okay. I just wanted to ask, what's the status of the old house back in town?" When I hung up, I let out a breath that had been stuck in my chest for what felt like years. Something heavy, something ancient had shifted just enough to let in a little air. And then the consequences of my changes came knocking. That weekend, Elwyn called. I didn't even need to answer to feel the fury vibrating through the line. "Mom, what the hell is going on with the bank? I tried to transfer money and it says the account is frozen. Did you change the passwords?" I clutched the phone, my hand damp with sweat, but my voice remained calm. "Yes. I changed everything. That's my account and I need the money for myself now." "What are you talking about?" he snapped. "That money was for all of us. You know, we use it to keep things moving. You doing this out of nowhere. It's a betrayal." I took a slow breath. "When did I ever say my retirement savings were your emergency fund?" I asked. "Owen, I worked my whole life for that money. And the credit card? The $10,000 you transferred from my fixed deposit. Who gave you permission for that?" Silence. I could hear him trying to process the fact that I knew everything. Then his voice came back. Louder, angrier, more defensive. "Mom, you've changed. Since when did you become so stingy? Families are supposed to share. What's yours is mine. I helped you open that credit card to build your score. You should be thanking me." "Thank you." I let out a soft laugh. "You opened it in my name. You maxed it out. You lied, manipulated, and stole. And you think I should thank you? I raised you to be a decent man, not a leech. I didn't survive all these years just to be used and discarded by my own child." There was a beat. Then a roar. "Fine. Fine. Alva Swan, remember this. You want to be alone? Then be alone. Don't expect another damn word from me ever again." And he hung up. The line went dead. And yet I'd never felt calmer. He tried to guilt me for protecting myself. But for the first time it didn't cut. His outrage no longer pierced my heart. Because now I understood. When family only shows up when there's money involved, it's not love. It's a transaction. And I'm done being the one who always pays. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply felt something land, finally, after floating too long in confusion. A quiet peace. A clean break. So be it. In the days that followed, I began quietly preparing to leave. I dug deep into the back of my closet and pulled out everything important. Deed to the old house, birth certificate, social security card, my bank records. I treated them like sacred items, packing them into a zippered file pouch like I was carrying the last of myself. Then I opened a brand new savings account at a different bank. I transferred almost all of my funds into it, leaving just enough in the old account to keep appearances. I set a new password and I didn't tell anyone, especially not Alwyn. For the first time in years I felt steady. Like I'd finally found the first stepping stone on a new path. At the same time I called my nephew who still lived in my old hometown. I asked if he could help fix up the house. Nothing fancy, just get the plumbing and electricity running, maybe change the locks. He said he'd take care of it, no problem. I wired him money directly from the new account. As I sat there going through years of papers, records, and passwords, it felt like I was piecing together a version of myself I'd never gotten to be. A woman who lived her life. Not for a husband. Not for a son. Not for anyone who only knew how to take. And just as I was quietly planning my next chapter, Alwyn and Debbie started acting strange. It started with a phone call from Debbie. Her voice was unusually sweet. Sickly even. "Hi Mom, how have you been feeling? Last time you mentioned some tightness in your chest. Are you okay now?" I kept my tone flat. "I'm fine. Nothing serious." "That's good. Really good," she said, pausing before her voice softened even more. "Say, are you free this weekend? We were thinking you should come over for dinner. I went to the market and bought your favorite cut. I was planning to cook it myself just for you." I couldn't help the cold smile that tugged at my lips. They were up to something. No question. And they weren't even trying to hide it well. "No, I've got plans this weekend," I replied without hesitation. "Oh, come on, Mom. Hardy's been asking for you non-stop," she said, persistent as ever. "It's been too long since we all sat down together." Her sudden warmth chilled me more than her usual indifference ever did. It reminded me of a line I once heard: "A cat doesn't smile at a mouse for no reason, unless it wants a cleaner kill." I refused her again and hung up, my guard fully up now. And just 2 days later, what happened next left me truly shaken. I had planned to take out the deed from my file pouch to double-check the address on record for the house. I unzipped it calmly, then froze. It was empty. The deed. My personal documents. Everything, gone. My ears rang. I stood completely still, unable to breathe. A cold sweat rushed over me, drenching my back as if I'd just stepped out of a freezing shower. I knew exactly where those papers had been. I had packed them myself just days ago. And there were no signs of a break-in. No damage. No forced entry. Which meant only one thing. I forced down the panic bubbling in my throat and dialed Alwyn's number. "Alwyn," I said, my voice like a blade, "did you take the deed to my house? And the rest of my personal documents?" There was a pause. Then his voice came through, laced with fake confusion and wounded innocence. "The deed? Mom, what are you talking about? Why would I touch your stuff?" "Don't lie to me," I snapped, my voice trembling but resolute. "Everything in my file pouch is missing. Did you call just to pick a fight the other day so I'd leave the house and let my guard down? Did you come in while I was out and steal from me?" As I said the words, I realized how clear the pattern was, how calculated. That argument on the phone, his sudden flare-up, it had all felt off. Loud. Disorienting. Was it all just a distraction? A setup to make me leave so he could slip in unnoticed? The silence on the other end was telling. And then, finally, he exploded. "Mom. What the hell? You think I'd do that? Are you serious right now? Maybe you misplaced them. You sure you're not forgetting things?" There was that dismissive tone. That insinuation that I was too old to keep track of my own life. As if his betrayal wasn't the issue, but my fading memory. It hit like a slap. And for a second I almost wavered. Because he was still my son. The same little boy who used to run to me, scraped knees and all, for comfort. I didn't want to believe he'd do this. Then came the knock at the door. It was Lucy, my neighbor. She slipped inside, glanced nervously down the hall and lowered her voice. "Alva, I have to tell you something," she whispered. "Yesterday I was out back hanging laundry and I saw your son. He came by." My chest clenched. "You're sure?" She nodded. "He stood outside your door for a while. Looked around kinda shifty. Like he was searching for a key. Then he got in. He didn't stay long, maybe 5 minutes. But when he left he was carrying something. Like a folder or binder." She hesitated, then added, "I almost called out to you. But he looked so angry. I didn't want to get involved." Her words struck like a hammer. Cold. Heavy. Final. My mind went blank. The truth was no longer up for debate. No longer something I could excuse away with hope. He had come into my home. He had taken those papers. He hadn't even tried to hide it. My entire body went cold. It felt like standing barefoot in snow. Numb, stripped of warmth, unable to move. It was him. It really was him. Every doubt, every lingering hope, every inner plea that maybe, this wasn't what it seemed, collapsed under the weight of one undeniable truth. Owen hadn't just lied to me. He hadn't just stolen my savings. He had come into my home, during the one moment I had let my guard down, and taken the most vital documents of my life, silently, methodically, like a stranger casing a house. After Lucy left and the door clicked shut behind her, I couldn't move. It was like my feet were nailed to the floor. Then I drew a deep breath and forced my mind into motion. No panic now. No outburst. I had to think. I knew exactly what mattered most in that moment. Evidence, initiative, and striking first. I locked the door, sat at my desk, and opened my notebook. I began to list everything I needed to do. Report the stolen documents to the police immediately and have them flagged as missing. File a freeze on my property with the city registry to prevent any unauthorized sale. Contact a lawyer and begin building a case for identity theft and financial fraud. Replace every lost document and reroute all mail to a trusted friend back in my hometown. Most importantly, show them I wasn't the pliable old woman they thought they could keep exploiting. By sunrise, I was already at the local precinct. I told the officer at the front desk that my identification, property deed, and social security card had all been, let's say, possibly removed by a family member without my knowledge or consent. I didn't hedge and I didn't drop names. I simply said, if I'd waited even a few more days, I might not legally own my house anymore. The officer didn't brush me off. In fact, he sat straighter. These weren't rare cases. They were tragically common. And he treated mine with the gravity it deserved. We'll open an investigation, he said. Can you provide photocopies or reference numbers for the missing documents? I can, I said, pulling out the duplicates I'd made weeks ago. I had always feared something like this could happen. That fear had become foresight. Next stop was the city property registrar. I filed an emergency freeze on all transactions involving my house. The clerk looked at me kindly yet cautiously. Ma'am, without you personally presenting valid ID, no one can legally transfer or sell this property. With this freeze in place, no transactions can proceed unless you revoke the hold yourself. I exhaled for the first time all day. I thought things would settle at least temporarily. But just 3 days later I got a call from the police department. Miss Swan, we're contacting you because someone attempted to file a co-authorization request to sell your property. The person claimed you were mentally unfit to handle your own affairs and needed a proxy to sign on your behalf. My blood ran cold. What name did they use? I asked, though I already knew the answer. Elwyn Swan, the officer said. There was an edge in his voice now, alert, skeptical. Can you come in and submit a formal statement? We'd also like to verify your current mental and physical health. I smiled, ice in my veins. Absolutely, I said. I've been waiting for him to try something like this. I arrived with my attorney that afternoon. In the conference room, I filed a formal opposition to the attempted transaction. Then I handed over a comprehensive health report signed by my primary care physician, dated 3 months prior, clear-headed, physically stable, and under no need for guardianship or power of attorney. I'd also like to file an official report, I said. Identity theft and financial fraud. My son accessed my retirement funds without permission, used my personal documents, and attempted to seize my property under false pretenses. The officer nodded. We've already opened an investigation. We reached out to Mr. Swan for an interview earlier today. I didn't say a word. I simply nodded, the weight in my chest replaced by a hard, steady calm. Later that afternoon my phone rang. It was him. His voice burst through the receiver like an animal backed into a corner. Are you insane? You called the cops on your own son? Do you know what you've done? You could get me charged. You want me to have a criminal record over this. I quietly tapped the record button. I'm surprised you care, I said flatly. You seemed fine spending my money without asking. Did you really think I'd stay quiet forever? That I'd smile and keep letting you treat me like a living atom? He went silent. Then his voice cracked. part rage, part guilt. Mom, what the hell is wrong with you? Debbie's been a wreck. She's practically depressed over all this. I almost laughed. She's upset because I stopped buying her handbags? Maybe she should post about that on her blog again. Or would you prefer I send this recording to the detectives and let them decide how sad she really is? The line went quiet. I leaned in, my voice sharp and low. Elwyn, I said, listen carefully. You can lose a job. You can fail in life. But you don't get to fail your mother and still expect her to clean up the mess. If you keep going down this path, I'll walk it with you, to the very end. But you'll be the one ruined, not me. Then I hung up. Elwyn wasn't done. That second weekend he drove all the way out to the old town, unannounced. His car rolled up with heat still steaming off the tires, like he'd been gripping the wheel the whole drive, choking on rage disguised as diplomacy. Mom, he called out, plastering on a grin that didn't reach his eyes, can we talk? I mean really talk? You've locked down the accounts, frozen the house. Come on, we're family. It doesn't have to be like this. I stood at the front gate, unmoved. His smile was strained, hollow. I tugged the latch and stared at him coolly. Sure, I said, but let's not waste time pretending. Are you here to apologize, or just to pressure me into backing down? His face dropped. The mask slipped fast. You think hiding out here makes you smart? Acting like some badass old lady? Those accounts, you just gonna sit on them until you die? I smiled. No. I plan to spend it, I said, dragging a chair out into the yard and sitting down like I had all the time in the world. I'm going to rent out this house, live off the income. I'll take a trip to Hawaii, buy myself a couple decent outfits, sign up for an art class and a baking course. You said I was useless, remember? I figure I might as well be useless in style. He flushed red, speechless for a moment. You're really doing this? He finally snapped. You're just cutting me off? Just like that. You stopped seeing me as your mother a long time ago, I said evenly. Now you want me to keep acting like your bank? Sorry, I'm retired. No more contributions. I turned and walked toward the house. He shouted after me, venom rising. Fine. Then when you're old and sick, don't come crying to us. You die in that house, no one's coming to clean up after you. I stopped at the door, not turning back. Don't worry, I said calmly. I've already got it handled. I bought long-term care insurance, put myself on a waiting list for a retirement home and signed up for body donation. Even in death, I won't be your burden. And with that I shut the door. Hard. He stood there a while longer, cursing under his breath. Then he kicked the steps, stomped back to his car and sped off. I glanced around the room. The house was old, no denying that, but the painting on the wall was new. My own. The cinnamon rolls cooling on the counter smelled like comfort. And in the backyard, a neighbor had just dropped off some tomato seedlings. Without them I wasn't withering, I was thriving. I didn't look out the window as he drove away. I didn't need to. The next morning my little tomato plant bore its first bright red fruit. I took a photo and posted it to the town's community message board. 5 minutes later a neighbor replied, "Your garden looks so warm. I'd love to stop by for tea sometime." I smiled, brewed a pot of Earl Grey and opened the front gate. After that, life bloomed like a pot finally allowed to boil. I enrolled in the local women's growth circle, picked up painting and pottery, even started dancing Zumba with a group of retired ladies who didn't believe in aging quietly. On Wednesday nights, I hosted a live session at the community radio station. The show was called Life After 60, Breaking Emotional Blackmail. After the very first episode my phone blew up. Dozens of local women, grandmothers, widows, mothers, messaged me the same thing. You just described my life. I never imagined that in my twilight years I could still be seen, still be wanted, not as someone's mom, but as me. Maybe that shift in the air reached Debbie too because she showed up one afternoon. She was dressed plainly, no designer labels, just neutral tones. She held a fruit basket and wore a forced smile. "Alva," she chirped, stepping inside uninvited, "I made a cake. Hardy's been saying he misses you." I glanced at the basket. A box of discounted blueberries and a bunch of bananas just days from spoiling. "Set it down," I said flatly. "Next time don't worry about the fruit. I miss Hardy too. He's welcome to write me letters." Her face faltered. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. We maybe said some things that came off too harsh, but it's been tough. Alwyn's not doing well at work and that has nothing to do with me, I cut in. Firm. Final. And if he ever uses my personal information again, I won't be calling the police. I'll be suing. She opened her mouth, then saw the look in my eyes and thought better of it. After a brief, awkward pause, she lowered her head and backed out the door. A few days later, Alwyn came back. This time he brought nothing. No fake smiles, no baskets of apology fruit. Just a wrinkled shirt and a face that looked like life had finally slapped him hard enough to leave a mark. "Mom," he murmured, his voice cracking at the edges. I messed up. I stood in the doorway watching him. I didn't say a word. He kept his head down, his voice barely louder than a whisper. My company collapsed. The money dried up. Debbie, she left me. I have nothing now. So I said nothing. I was wondering if I could stay here. Just for a while. I'm not asking for money, he added quickly. I don't want to be alone. I looked at him, really looked at him, like I was meeting a stranger. So now that you've lost everything, I said, voice even and cool, you think I'm supposed to go soft? He faltered. I know I was wrong. You already said we were done, remember? You told me to die alone and unbear it. You made your position crystal clear. His face turned red with shame. I walked past him and pulled the door open wider. You're not alone, Alwyn, I said, voice quiet but razor sharp. You've got something even better. The chance to finally learn how to stand on your own. He stood frozen. I leaned against the doorframe and looked at him. You were right, you know. We're done mixing waters. If you're hungry, the church kitchen's 150 feet down the road. If you're homeless, the city shelter's 3 bus stops to the left. He finally looked up at me. And what I saw in his eyes wasn't anger. It was something heavier. Defeat. The kind that comes when you realize you've burned every bridge and watch the ashes blow away. I turned without another word and gently closed the door behind me. That night, I sat by the window watering my tomato plant. The breeze carried a hint of gardenia. I picked up my phone and opened my calendar. A few dates were circled. Community talk. Family is not an ATM. Weekend getaway with the girls. Seaside cabin. Buy new watercolor pad. I smiled. The days ahead were mine now. And I wasn't wasting another moment clutching things, or people, that never deserved my sacrifice. From the day that door shut behind Alwyn, his life unraveled fast, like a train that had lost its track and kept accelerating anyway. He tried taking me to court. But he had no legal authorization. No legitimate explanations for the bank transfers, the credit card debt, or why my ID documents had been found in his house. What really sealed his fate? I had already made calls, to the bank, the housing authority, Social Security. I hadn't just reclaimed my home, I'd closed every door to dependency and betrayal. The court dismissed his claim. The police shelved the complaint. No attorney would take his case. Only then did Alwyn realize how badly he'd misjudged the woman who used to say yes to everything. As for Debbie, she unraveled faster. When she discovered the house couldn't legally be transferred to her name, and that the clean credit she thought they had was built on fraud, she snapped. She packed her bags and walked out without Hardy. No texts. No calls. Just one line left in a typed letter. I wanted a partner. Not a liability. Weeks later, Alwyn received an official court notice. She was voluntarily relinquishing custody. And so Hardy came back to me. I took him in. I'm not the kind of woman who cuts off a child to punish a parent. Especially not the only one who, on that miserable trip, looked me in the eye and said, "Grandma, I'm glad you came." He was my first spark of warmth. My last unfinished chord. I applied for temporary custody and enrolled him in the elementary school in town. He moved into my old house, which I'd made cozy with a few second-hand lamps and a bright quilt. Small-town life was new to him. He ate tomatoes right off the vine, biked down cornfield trails, and helped me finish puzzles at the kitchen table. He stopped staring at screens. Started drawing. Maybe it was me rubbing off on him, or maybe it was just the quiet. But Hardy began putting his emotions in color. Sometimes it was a soft sunrise. Other times, wild streaks of blue and orange. He didn't say much about what happened. I didn't push. We both knew healing wasn't about rehashing the past. It was about painting something new. Hardy grew quieter but stronger. He no longer asked when his mother was coming back or why his father stopped calling. He already knew the answers. His father wasn't strong anymore. His mother wasn't looking back. But he also knew something far more important. His grandmother, she never left. And she never asked for anything in return. Meanwhile, Alwyn had moved into a shared apartment on the outskirts of the city. He lived with 2 temp workers, each 10 years younger, taking turns for a lukewarm shower and waiting in line for a broken-down toilet. He tried reaching out to Hardy once, just once. The reply came in 3 short lines. Dad, when did you become like this? You weren't always like this. That message hit harder than any lawsuit ever could. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was the weight of disappointment from the one person he'd never wanted to lose. He'd lost his family. He'd lost his pride. And more than anything, he'd lost the right to be a son or a father. Some evenings he'd sit outside the corner bar, phone in hand, watching muted clips of me dancing at the community center or chatting on the local livestream with the other retired women. In those videos I'd be laughing, brightly, openly, with a garden behind me and a shelf of jams gifted by neighbors. He hovered over the comment button more than once. But he never pressed it. He was too afraid to see he'd already been blocked. And life went on. Months later, Hardy organized a student art show. The theme was Begin Again. He painted a single figure. A woman in a long coat standing in the morning light, her back to the viewer, a path stretching forward. Next to the painting he wrote, "I hope she never looks back. Because for the first time, she's finally walking forward." The piece hung in the school gallery for a full month. And every person who passed by, stopped.